And we're actually first of all going to talk about our team of distinction. This is a new tradition that we started a few years ago, and the first two teams that went in, extremely deserving. Of course, the national runner-up basketball team from 1959 went in a few years ago, and last third place national men's soccer team from 1973 went in. This year we have the opportunity to talk about another team that placed very high at the national tournament. Back in 1961 and 62, our men's basketball team here at Bethany went all the way to the national tournament and finished in 8th place. And to talk a little bit about that team and their achievements, we have two members of the team here tonight who are going to talk about their achievements. We'll start things off with Larry Burke.
Several years ago, I was with Art Westfall, and I said I had the great honor of being inducted into Bethany's Hall of Fame '88. And I received quite a few honors for playing on that team for those years. And Art, you know, basketball is a team sport. There's no I in team. And the rewards that I got were a part of the players that I played with. And this gives me, I said, if the team were chosen, it would be an opportunity for me to thank those people. And they're here tonight, many of them. We had a great team. We were fundamentally sound. Coach Mintz, Coach Bruno Walensky, Coach Schultz, and trying to think of, we had a fourth one that helped with the team quite a bit. But they worked with us, and they worked on the fundamentals. And it allowed us to play the kind of basketball that we did. We played pretty aggressive. And I told both Bruno and Coach Schultz that they taught me some tricks that I took on when I played at the University of Tulsa. They got me into trouble. As a matter of fact, I held the record there of fouling out for many years because Bruno had this little trick. He just ticked the elbow, and I guess I wasn't doing it where I couldn't be recognized well enough. But anyway, so it was terrific what they trained us and the team that we had. We worked hard, we liked one another, we were friends, and of course we lived together. And I think that we had what would be described just as an awesome team. It allowed many of us to go on to do other things. I can't say enough for what they did. Bethany has been a part of my life. It's been an important part of my life. And Bob asked me tonight what I thought of Bethany, and I could tell you I would not be here tonight, and I would not have lived the life that I've lived if it were not for Bethany. It's been very, very important part of my background and something that my family is so proud of. My mother wanted, in fact, I have two brothers that went to school here after I did, and I had a sister-in-law that went to Bethany, so our roots go pretty deep here, and we're all proud of it. And it's good to see team players here tonight that I have not seen for 50 years, and back in my memory bank to remember them. And then we're sitting here talking and things are coming back, and I hope the same is true for them. But they look great, and we're so thankful to have Coach Mintz with us tonight. He worked as hard on fundamentals, and it's interesting. We played a different style of basketball here. When I went on to play after here, it was not nearly as well organized, and it was a lot more difficult for me. So I'm really appreciative of Coach Mintz and the coaching staff here for all of us. And I would like to thank the nominating committee and the committee that chose our team. I think we are a deserving team. I think we worked hard. And I would like to thank all of them for giving us this opportunity to meet once again and share memories and share them with you. With that, I'm going to turn it over to Bob. He has some comments that he'd like to make. And thank you very much. God surely had a plan when he sent me to Bethany, and my mother and father, they're not with us today, but they were so insistent about this, and they said, this is what will be good for you and for us. So thank you very much.
I'm going to try to fill you in on some of what's been going on in the last 55 years. It's 55 years now, Larry, not 50. And I've been fortunate that I've really been close to Bethany for all those years. And I was close to Coach Minch because where I taught and coached, we were only about 45 minutes apart. So we spent a lot of time together. I had a chance to watch both programs. I sent players to both programs. So I have a pretty good insight, I think, into what's been kind of going on. And let me tell you a little bit about when we came to Bethany in 1960. We had two buildings on campus. They just opened up the gym. That was the second building. And I think that was the second year in that, maybe the first year, second year. And most of the players were recruited by Mintz. Of course, Coach Mintz, he grew up in Illinois, and that was kind of his pipeline. He brought a lot of Illinois players up. I think there were 6 of us on that team when we traveled. We had 4 Indiana players. So he just brought up some guys that he thought could play ball. We get up here and we kind of see Bethany, a lot of us for the first time. It was quite different than what we expected. So we started our, I'll kind of go to the 61-62 season, that's who you're honoring. I remember our preseason workouts. We would take off, this was what you'd call today a captain's practice, I suppose. We would take off and we'd take a 3 to 5 mile an hour run, not a jog, a run. We'd end up on the steps, we'd come up the steps, and then we'd go on scrimmage and bang at each other for about an hour and a half. That's how we tried to get ready because we knew when season started, Coach Mintz was going to kill us. So we had to get ready. And that's what we did. The conditioning was there, the toughness was starting to be developed. The practices were tough. Well, after I left Bethany, I was in the military a short time later, and I remember saying to myself, I was going through boot camp, this is nothing compared to our practices, and it wasn't. So the practices is, you had to get up like it was a game. You had to go to those practices because it was going to be a fight. And everybody was about their business. We had big guys, we were very physical, and that's just the way we played. Every night was like a game. In fact, I think some of the games were easier than many of our practices. The road trip, this is kind of interesting. I happen to drive a lot of team buses, so I see how they travel today. That year we went to New York on a 5-game trip. Now, fancy buses, we didn't have any buses. So they piled 10 players out of the 15 on the squad into 2 cars. The coaches split us up, so if one car got separated, we didn't get to the game, a coach would have enough players to start the game, and hopefully we'd get there before somebody get injured or fall out. And so we played 5 games. It was barnstorming in its truest form. We ended up at 10:30 out in Rochester, New York on a Saturday night, where our last game. Now, this is 61. There's not many freeways around. And we jumped into cars and we headed back to Bethany because we had classes on Monday. 21-hour drive, 3 hours out, we get separated. I know in our car, we were worried about having enough money to have gas money to get back. We made it. And those are some of the things I remember. I don't remember a lot of the games, but those are rather unique, to say the least. I kind of asked myself, what made this team so good? I've watched a lot of basketball, a lot of different levels, And there's 4 things that I think. I'm kind of coming at this from a coach's perspective now. I did coach for quite a while, and so I'm looking at it from that. When I try to analyze this team, we had great coaches. Coach Mintz was so far his time, it was unbelievable. He worked us. We were going to be in shape. We were going to be the best conditioned team. He knew how to recruit. He recruited good talent, and he knew where to play those players and where to put them in a situation where they could succeed. He had great combinations on the floor, and that was really, and I guess the strongest point, and what I 2 years here when I got into coaching was he was such a great motivator. It was interesting how he would look at each person and try to figure out what made him tick. And he would try different motivation techniques on different people. Larry, you might remember our first game in the locker room. I'm not going to go any more than that. I remember that still. Didn't work with Larry, but those techniques would work on other people. And so he would figure out what made each person play his best and what made the team go. And so I think that's what really kind of brought this thing together. Now going back, so the coaching we definitely had. There was nobody equal to Coach Mintz in our con. He's had success any place he's gone. That speaks for itself. He recruited great talent. When I got up here and I started playing these guys, I thought, whoa, these guys can play ball. And I think Ron Young, you kind of noticed the same thing when you got in that mix too. So it was tough. It was really a battle out there, and these guys had talent. So you had to bring your A game every night. We had I think just about every player in that team could have gone on to a higher level if they wanted to. Many of them did, played at higher levels. We were so deep. I think we probably had 15 players on the team, 11 freshmen, 4 sophomores. We should have had a 5th. Luther Dorr decided that he's going to take a year off. That was the poorest decision I think he's ever made. But he was a great player too. He was on our team in 60-61. He would have fit in perfect with his team. And so we had depth. I really think that if we would have split that team up, we might have finished 1st and 2nd in the conference. We just were so deep. Certainly that other team would have been in the mix somewhere. I think the last thing that really separates this team from any team I've ever been a part of is the mental toughness. I've never been associated with a group of people who simply losing was not an option. We would work hard from day one, always with that in mind that we were going to win.
Thank you, Don. Interesting sitting back there and thinking about the team that was just inducted and who all will be inducted tonight, and it'll be, over a 50-year span. And I've been fortunate enough to be involved in every one of these. And as Don alluded to earlier, lots of different emotions that have been shared over the years, beginning in 1995 with the first induction. But it just, the whole event just reinforces the great tradition of athletics here at Bethany for 50 or 60 years. And I can't tell you how proud I am and how privileged I've felt to have been involved in some small part of that. And I think of the iconic names, and I know if I mention names, I'll leave somebody out, but the names that I heard when I came here as a student with Dwayne Mintz and Larry Burke and Ron Young and Mike Butterfield, and Dwayne Mintz, as a high school coach in Wisconsin, I heard about Dwayne Mintz coaching at Stout. The tradition that we have had here, the winning tradition, is pretty special. And we talk about Bethany being a small school, but when we look and we hear of names like that are not just local names, but became statewide names and national names, and Bruno Walensky. And when I came here, I heard about Bruno, and then I played intramural basketball
against this old guy, and he probably scored 50 against me, and he couldn't jump a lick. And all he did was score every time he touched the basketball. So again, it's a wonderful, wonderful thing that we have all now had an opportunity to be involved with. So congratulations to all the inductees tonight, and welcome back to all the inductees who are here currently. Now I get to introduce Raleigh Reinholz, who is the first one going into this particular category that Don alluded to. And the wording reads, "This goes to an individual who has supported Bethany's athletic program in a special manner, but not necessarily as a coach or athlete." Special is the word that I think of when I think of Raleigh, a special friend of mine, a special friend of Bethany. You know, Raleigh's passion for athletics goes back to in high school, and when he's telling me he weighed 130 pounds, and for some reason the basketball coach didn't think he could play because he weighed 130 pounds. So then he became an accomplished tennis player. He became accomplished in curling. And then later on, as he moved into being one of the better bowlers in the Madison area. And of course, we all know his love for golf. And there's for all of us, I think, there's certain people that we cross paths with who impact us by maybe their examples or some of the things that they said to you. And Raleigh certainly is one of those people for me. I certainly can't count, and I think Raleigh and I were talking this morning, and he used the number 200. I can't count the number of conversations that Raleigh and I have had over the years, whether it was on the golf course or over dinner, or whether it was in Madison or it was in Florida or here in Mankato. And Raleigh has this unique ability to put things in perspective. So we'd be playing golf and I'd be struggling, and Raleigh would say, "Well, what would you tell one of your players if they were struggling shooting free throws?" And of course I'd say, "Well, they need to practice more." And he would say, "How much do you practice golf?" "Not at all." And he said, "Well, then don't complain." Or there were times when he would just say, "You know, Art, you're just not that good." He was able to put things in perspective. I think one time he even said, "You stink." And then as I moved into my current position, I will never forget what Raleigh told me. He said, to be successful in what you're about to do, the most important thing is what do the people say when you leave and they close the door? And I never forgot that. It was awesome. Of course, our conversations typically centered around athletics. Badger athletics. Raleigh is a huge Wisconsin fan, like I think most people either are or want to be. And then we would eventually and always get to Bethany athletics and the importance of Bethany athletics. And Raleigh would always articulate how important it was that we had athletics at Bethany and that those athletic teams were successful. And he then became a Board of Regent member, which you see in your program, for 20 years, and people that worked with him on the board used these terms to describe him: positive, enthusiastic. He was able to look at the big picture. He was a team player. He had his ideas, but at the end of the day, when the group decided, he went along with the group. He was a cheerleader for Bethany, both in the boardroom and away from the boardroom. And I just want to share something that former President Meyer sent me. Raleigh, I'm very pleased that the athletic department has chosen you to be inducted in the Bethany Athletic Hall of Fame. The support that you have demonstrated both to Bethany's athletic department and Bethany in general has helped the overall development of the institution. As a member of Bethany's Board of Regents, early in your tenure as a regent, you took an interest in athletics. Your financial support helped in developing the golf tournament, just as your overall interest in athletics at Bethany meant so much for both our student athletes and our coaches. I do need to add that during my time as president at Bethany, I was blessed to have a very supportive board, individuals that worked hard and made difficult decisions for which I'm very thankful. But I must say that not all understood the broader role of a regent as you did. Many thanks. Pat and I wish to congratulate you on this honor and wish you and Lois our Lord's richest blessings. And I think that really pretty much sums up what Raleigh meant as a board member to the athletic program here. He was the voice of athletics in the boardroom. He understood the importance of athletics. A lot of people talk about the importance of something. He was willing to do something about it. So when we started the golf tournament here, the Sports Classic, in 1986 was the first year, and actually 3 of the 4 people that sat around and kind of wrote this thing out on a napkin, Mark Matson, Ron Young, and myself, the first year we had 32 golfers. Second year we grew a little bit, then Raleigh became involved. And shortly we had 144. And Raleigh, for many, many years, said, whatever you profit on the golf tournament, I will match. And he did. It was an unbelievable blessing to the athletic program, what we could do with those funds. And then Raleigh said, Art, wouldn't it be great if we had a golf tournament in Madison? So we started a golf tournament in Madison, and we should have called it the Raleigh Reinholz Golf Tournament, because Raleigh took care of everything. He got us on one of the nicest courses in Madison. It was a great time. Anybody who was there, it was terrific. And Raleigh always insisted that we had the best meal, and we had to have a Black Hawk Sundae when we were done, which was terrific. So I really believe this, that the success that the athletic program enjoyed here in the 90s was Raleigh had a direct effect on that. 2 of the later inductees had the opportunity to have the experience they had because of what Raleigh was willing to do. And so Raleigh, it gives me a great honor to be able to introduce you and welcome you into the Hall of Fame here at Bethany. Congratulations.
Thanks, Art. I'm very excited. This is very special. When George Orvik appointed me to the Regents, and George, by the way, Orvik, past president of the Synod, married my wife Lois, and we've been together 59 years at Holy Cross. I'm very fortunate to have some of my family here tonight, my daughter, my grandson, my brother Gary, Larry and Arlene Tyler. If I think of the Regents, my 20 years, and in the second part of the 20 years, is when I was able to vote with the great Schwann Foundation possibility, become one of the 7, and say, yes, we will now start a 4-year college at Bethany. And it was as thrilling as it is to me tonight to think of that again. Because the 2-year college was great. But one of those 200 to 500 meetings with Art Westfield, I know I would have mentioned, we need one more level. A 2-year college is not America. We need a 4-year college with full degrees. Art knew it, so did everybody on the Regents. But I do feel that made me fun to have a voice in thinking that and talking about it. We then, in the terms then of the Regents, I was able with Marv Meyer to then go forward, and I thank Marv for his comments. And then with Marv, we got the breakthrough to the 4-year college. And we started being able to add degrees. But one of the things which was true in my whole 20 years is I would keep aware of, we got about 200 freshmen, so let's say 160 to 180. But how many are athletic? Okay, it was always 60 to 80 out of 200 were there because of the athletic side. I said, what's the most important thing at Bethany? And in my 20 years as a regent, and there may be some regents here tonight, I feel I was the only one that brought up athletics over the 20 years in any regents meetings, because their interest is not misdirected at all. Let's have pastors here. Let's have somebody in chemicals. Let's have an engineering student. But I said, that's just as important, but equally more important is the athletic side. The numbers are there, and the people in athletics can really lead and be leaders for your college. This happened. After the four-year college, and Art Westfield and the staff, Ron Young, there were several others that did it. They just came to a regents meeting right early, and I remembered saying nothing about it first, and afterwards saying to myself, I wish I would have come up with it. They said, we have to be Division III. And if you can't believe a college that's only going to be 500 or 600 brand new in the Minnesota market, being a 3-year division college and competing with St. Olaf, competing with Gustavus Adolphus, and then trying to think you could ever do that with a small, they just said, we're going to do it, it's the right thing to do, and I knew it was too, but I have to give the credit to Art and the staff to do it. It's done. Today, I think I heard the news from Art this morning, there's 17 teams in the current Bethany team, college, they compete on Division III in a formal league. That is big time, and it's here already. It's not small. It's wonderful. That's all I can say on that. I have to make a comment about the presidents, because of course with Marv Meyer then, that was a great start. That's, as you get older, that's distant now though. So the real president that I remember is Dan Bruss. He happens, and it was by coincidence, I'm able to see him again sitting here, which has been wonderful because many of the dinner meetings we've had with Art have been with Dan Bruss or luncheons and everything else. And Dan's thrust is not athletics in the sense that I want to say it. Because when Art and I are alone, which is, if we are, he knows I've told him about 8 times. There's no president that stresses athletics. I've never met one yet. I did tonight. I met Gene for the first time tonight, and I will guarantee you now I'll get back at Art correctly. Art said to me, from whether it is 1 to 3 years back when Gene came on the picture, Art said, we have a president that understands athletics. Congratulations. Keep it going. In a final say like that, out of the 200 freshmen, there's always going to be 60 to 80 that are in or want to be here with athletics. And I don't want to miss mentioning, there's a huge difference today, 15, 20 years ago, when mostly men played athletics. Now it's switched over. In fact, I think that some number today, maybe 53% of the students at Bethany are women, and something like 47% are men. And the women's volleyball team is the only one there, competing on a national level. And without mentioning them one by one, it's a huge, wonderful addition. And I'll conclude by something Art said to me about a week ago, or maybe a month ago. If we have, I always call him, and sometimes I get a call back. And now that I'm back in Wisconsin, rooting for the Badgers at home again, it can continue even more. But Art said, have you ever been to Bethany? And as we're one of the sideline conversations just on a weekend. And I said, well, I really don't do it much. And however it came up, and Art brought it up, he said, well, at 6 o'clock in the morning, you go to both gyms. They're full. At 10 o'clock in the morning, you go to both gyms. They're full of people. Saturday. Gonna go Sunday? Oh, they're there. Yes, they go to church, but they're also in the basket. They're in their playing and practicing basketball, football, whatever, or soccer, track, just exercising. And I said, well, how many people are in this hall right here, Ralph E. Hansa Hall, in the study hall? How many people are in there? Oh, you might find one or two once in a while. Can you get a greater impact on what happens in a real college than that? This is every week, week after week in Bethany. It is not discounting at all the importance of the pastor's first, of a chemical degree or an engineering degree, but it puts the emphasis where it's correctly placed. Out of 600 students, 44% are actively playing on an organized sport. It's a wonderful thing for Bethany.
As I promised you, he's very committed to athletics, and I think you can tell that. So congratulations, Raleigh. You know, one of the exciting things of this program every year is to, bring people such as Raleigh and others up here to induct them into our Hall of Fame. And, then occasionally the Lord has a different plan for people. And our next inductee is here tonight, not physically, but we know that he's here. He's here with his family. He's here with his former coach and his teammates as well. This was an individual who came to Bethany and was a very important part of a successful soccer team that very quickly, in a matter of just a few years, took Bethany not only beyond just a statewide and a regional presence, but was part of a group of young men who took Bethany to national prominence, and that ended with the third place finish in the national tournament, which ironically, if I get the story correct, Joe was in the 9th overtime, did the penalty kick to bring home the third place trophy here to the campus. So again, Giuseppe Joe Costanzo, a very important individual, and we're very excited to bring him in. I know Steve, we had talked a while ago, and Steve, if you've ever had a chance to talk to him about his soccer abilities, he's obviously a very gifted player, but Steve was the first to tell you, Don, there were other guys on that team who are as deserving, and I think Steve would be the first to say Joe is definitely part of that group. So to talk about Joe Costanzo is his former coach, Mike Butterfield.
If you travel to the Bethany website, you will find a statement there about mission and vision and purpose. Bethany Lutheran College engages students with the saving knowledge of Christ and assists them in developing their God-given talents and abilities for meaningful lives of service in the family, in church, and in society. Tonight it is important that we all reflect on the one thing needful. To Dr. Pfeiffer, to Don Westfall, Athletic Director. I always like the way Don says currently, because who knows what he'll be doing next year. To the committee that makes these decisions, we thank you, but recognize that you're really making a difference. Continue to make a difference in the lives of this world, in this kingdom, and these people behind me. I wanted them here very intentionally tonight because this is the group that's responsible for Joe Costanzo's nomination, and finally for your committee then to choose that Joe should be a candidate. It's a night of firsts. Joe being the first posthumously inducted. It was the first team that showed its national ability in soccer to be competitive. He was a member of the first team that brought Chicago-based players and Twin City-based players together for a formula that worked for us for a long time. And finally, it's the first because it's the first time that we have these folks here celebrating together the life of a friend and the life of an outstanding athlete, an outstanding person in Giuseppe Costanzo. I'm here tonight also with 3 of his family members. I want to introduce these people to you. Steve Konstantinovich is from Peoria, Illinois area, was a longtime friend of Joe's in Chicago. Doug Olson is here, formerly Edina, in Minneapolis now. Bob Ray from Bloomington, now also Minneapolis. Glenn White from Alexandria currently, but lived in Bloomington when I recruited him years ago. Jerry Kessler, Bloomington, now in the Twin Cities area as well, and Scott Eckberg. Two players not here tonight that I'm going to mention because they were instrumental in the nomination process, recognizing that it was totally these fellows that got together and said, Coach, this is the way it should be done. Tom Metcalf was a goalkeeper for us, currently lives in Florida and is out east these days, can't be here tonight. Was here 2 years ago to introduce Steve Konstantinovich into our Hall of Fame here at Bethany. And Claudio Otenzio, who was from Philadelphia, who became everyone's best friend, and I saw on Facebook, yes, I'm 70, and I do like Facebook at times. But I saw that it's Claudio's birthday tomorrow, so if this is taped and Claudio ever sees it, he'll recognize that we honored him tonight, because I'm certainly not going to wish him a happy birthday tomorrow on Facebook. Tonight also, a man not here is the Reverend John Shep. It's important to me tonight that you recognize the name John Shep. John was a classmate of mine, was recruited from the city in Chicago, Ukrainian in background. Pastor Custer was the one that convinced him to come here. John was a seminarian and decided that he wanted to recruit some Chicago-based athletes, soccer players, to this institution. It is John's vision that these young men from Chicago should be part of this campus. I will long remember that when I asked Chaim Kornstein, one of those first members, in addition to Joe, in addition to Steve, and many other names that you might recognize if you've been around Bethany, I remember Chaim one day when I said, Chaim, what would you say in a letter to someone in Chicago to come to Bethany, to help persuade them to come? And he would say, Coach, the air is clear in Mankato. And so there are more memories than what I can share tonight. But I also want to introduce to you the family that's here. His niece, Selena, will speak to you later, but Joe's sister, Teresa, is here, and Lena, and his brother, Jack, and then again his niece, Selena, who will address us in a few minutes. A wise person said to each one of us, friendship has a different meaning. For all of us, it is a gift. Isn't friendship a gift? Think about your friends. Friendship needs to be cherished and nurtured, then it shall germinate and yield its fruit. Tonight is a night when these friends of Giuseppe Costanzo have yielded a wonderful fruit of love for a departed friend. Another said, friendship should be a responsibility, never an opportunity. These men have taken this responsibility at this time of opportunity. Another said, friendship is a comforting smile, a familiar voice that warms your heart, and the freedom to be the person God intended him to be. I couldn't help but reflect immediately on this wonderful word of Paul in Philippians. Do nothing out of selfish ambition or vain conceit. Rather, in humility, value others above yourselves, not looking to your own interests, but each of you to the interests of others. These fellows did not nominate themselves. They nominated a friend. Giuseppe was born in Italy, Calabria, if I've got the pronunciation correct, on the boot of Italy, if you can envision that along with me. Came to the United States in 1967 at the age of what, 13? Well, we were debating 12 or 13, and Jack won out. It was 12. He grew up playing in Chicago, and that's where John Shep identified him. John would take his time on weekends and weekdays developing relationships with Chicago soccer clubs. And if you know anything about soccer in Chicago, you know it is war. To referee in Chicago and have a game where there's a dispute means the police better be there after the game is over. That's the nature of what Joe did there. But I learned tonight from the family that Joe, at the very young ages in Italy when he was playing, was also picked up by the older guys, because he was so doggone good. They would watch him play, and then they would battle to see if he would play in their club the next year. In 1973, a very creative journalist from the Mankato Free Press decided that they were going to have a field goal kicking contest with our goalkeeper, Tom Metcalf, with Giuseppe Costanzo, and the field goal kicker from Mankato State University. Well, if you read the article that's back on the table, you will find that Giuseppe Costanzo, at the height of 5 feet 6 inches, but as one player said, legs like tree trunks, beat the Mankato kicker by 5 yards. Joe kicked the ball in through the goal, 55 yards from the goal. The field goal kicker from Mankato, only 50. And Metcalf would be pleased to know that he won the contest at 60 yards kicking field goals. But it was a time then that the Mankato Free Press really was creative, and it was a wonderful time for Bethany, too, to be promoted and became advocates of what Bethany is doing and has grown so wonderfully over a number of years. Joe played a center back. If you envision a goalkeeper, you've got the goal, of course, and then you have the goalkeeper, and right ahead of him is that last man. That was Joe's position for us. Fast, quick, and of course as powerful as it can be. Tom Metcalf said that Joe was the toughest defender he had ever seen, and certainly the best that had ever played ahead of him as a goalkeeper. The players wrote to me in this last several weeks talking about Joe and said he was the glue that held the connection together between Bethany, that is the Mankato players, the Minneapolis players, and the Chicago players, because he was such a wonderful teammate. Humility was very much part of Joe. Even in 1973, the year that we won third place in the nation, he was in the all-conference team, the all-region 13 team, the national tournament team, Bethany's most valuable player, and I think for the second year was an All-American player. Most famously, Steve Konstinovich, who you see standing here, the tall fellow, in 2 years for me, even in practice, never missed a penalty shot. I know this is inside baseball. You have to know what penalty shots mean. But I don't think Steve missed a shot even in practice. So the wisdom of this coach said in Miami, playing for the third place championship in 94-degree weather, I took Steve out because he was tired in the 9th overtime, just when we were awarded a penalty kick. And so you could imagine what was going through my mind. And Steve, being the teammate he always was, did all he could to encourage Joe, and he claims that Joe walked up with great confidence. I think so, because Joe certainly knew his game. And what I recall about Joe hitting that penalty kick, is that the ball, he hit the top of the ball, I believe. We're disputing that a little as we talk about it, but the ball kind of rolled into the lower right corner of the net for the championship-winning goal. However it went in, I can tell you that it's a lifetime memory for all of us, and certainly one that we'll never forget. Players said Joe was a team player. He had a great sense of humor. He made me a better person and a better player. He was a fantastic guy. He was intelligent, a talented artist, loved to draw, loved to paint, and a poet. We called him, Steve said, the Renaissance man. Claudio described him as having a soft and kind heart. I have a very personal memory of Joe. We were in a soccer match just heading out to the field, and we always had time for prayer before our matches. And it was Joe, I remember it vividly, who got the team together and said, come on, this isn't a matter of good luck. We need to pray. And I remember Giuseppe Costanzo for that reason alone. Joe, at the age of late 20s, started an Italian restaurant. Can you imagine? Bought an Asian, Chinese restaurant and had a going Italian restaurant business in Huntsville, where he and Steve and Claudio went and played soccer, took them to a national playoff game in California. And it was there where Joe started the restaurant called Fratelli's, which means brothers. And it was in that business where at the age of 30, he died of a heart attack. And so that's the memory we have of Joe. But tonight I learned that in addition to that, even today, and far expanded from when he started it, he helped in the Huntsville, Alabama area to start a soccer club called the Rockets. And they now exist not just with youth, but also with men and with women and programs throughout the area. He had risen, certainly, to be a hero in this campus and a hero in our memories, and certainly in that community has been a man that has been far beyond his years and his influence to so many. There will be perhaps others that the committee will decide posthumously to induct, but I would go to so far to say is that Joe will certainly be among the most qualified and the most talented people that's ever been inducted in any of our sports. Selena, I would like to introduce you for a few comments from the family, if you will.
Good evening. On behalf of the Costanzo family, I'd like to thank everybody who helped get my uncle inducted. Coach Bloomfield, Steve Konstantinovic, Don Westfall. This is a great honor for our family, especially for my grandmother, who could not be here today due to an injury. Giuseppe, he was her first child, so his passing was always very hard on her. Although my uncle died before I was born, I always obviously grew up listening to my grandmother talk about him and show me pictures and always talk about how much he loved soccer. And every summer we go to Italy, and when I go to Italy, I'm amazed at how much even his old coach still talks about him and talks about, you know, just his skill and everything. And I'm just very touched by the close-knit faith-based community here at Bethany. This was it's very nostalgic for my mom and my aunt to be here today because they remember when they were little girls. And my mom always tells me a story of once when she was in school, my uncle went and got them out of school and drove them all the way up here to Minnesota. And so they're very happy to be here today, and we're very honored. I would like to read, if possible, I would like to read a poem that was written July 31st, 1978 by my uncle, and this poem is titled A Great Love. How many years passed since that very first kick on that ball of rays? It was love at first sight. Today we remain in love. Now she's dressed of leather, full of beauty and roundness. Proudly I carry her through the field that I cease to know. When she crosses those sacred posts, I exult as a feline to celebrate. I approach her happily. I held her tight within my hands and set her amidst the field, and all thus can admire her. Back then I kicked her with naked feet within sharp rocks of dusty roads. I resisted pain even with warmth. I would take her for a walk. How many times my mother yelled, how many slaps upon my buttocks. And here I am, happy more than ever, me and my ball, inseparable couple, a few more years together, and then even I will sit with melancholy upon those bleachers to admire a blooming of new hearts that will follow proudly my steps and will love deeply my beloved. When the non-faraway day will come, a sad nostalgia will fill my heart. Once again, thank you so much, and it's an honor for me to accept this award for my family because they would be a little too emotional now to accept it. Thank you all so much for having us. Thank you.
Thank you, Don.
A scholar of the game. But even Art would tell you that as smart as the manager might be, you're going to have some good players to pull it off. And Art knew baseball, and Art Westfall knows how to recruit talent. And when he found Doug Radel, he found a lot of talent. And Art, I'd like you to come up and speak about the young man that's going to be our next inductee.
I'm not sure what the other reasons I was brought back for, but I do remember the phone call from Ron Young saying, Art, we'd like you to come back and be our baseball coach and also work in admissions. And I said, what is that? I had no idea what else I was going to do, but I knew I wanted to coach baseball. And I certainly thank Ron and everyone else who was responsible for giving me the opportunity to come back and do that. 25 years ago, Doug Radel showed up on campus. We were just talking about that, how fast that time went. Doug was the first all-state player in Wisconsin that I was able to recruit. First team all-state player in Wisconsin coming to Bethany Lutheran College in a baseball program that at that time was less than 10 years old. So I drove to Appleton, Wisconsin to watch Doug play in the high school all-star game. So Doug was arguably in the top 50 players in the state of Wisconsin. And I saw him throw from the outfield, and I thought, wow, we have something special here. And then when he arrived here, and I heard the ball hit the bat when he swung, and that was a different sound than we had been accustomed to hearing, I knew we had something really special here. And so Doug was one of those guys that, in my opinion, had the absolute perfect personality. Now, talking to his dad earlier today, he didn't always have that personality, but he had the perfect personality to be a successful baseball player because he was loose, he could laugh in the dugout, and then just go play hard. You know, and sometimes athletes, in particular young athletes, I think get confused between having fun and fooling around, but the idea that you can have fun and you can be relaxed and really play hard. And Doug was one of those athletes that had that kind of baseball mentality. And you know, I've had the pleasure of introducing a number of players over the years, and so I always like to talk to their teammates, because as coaches sometimes we forget certain things. The players remember everything. They remember things you said that you don't remember you said. And so I asked a number of his teammates who are here tonight to give me a description of what they thought of Doug as a player. And these are some of the terms that came out. Fierce competitor, great teammate, great leader, willing to do the little things. And I think that ability and that willingness to do the little things that make you successful is what's making Doug successful now in his career with Enterprise. And we had a great conversation a couple months ago. Doug was telling me about interviewing people for Enterprise and what he looks for. And I couldn't help but kind of internally think about, he was looking for things that made him successful. So he's been able to carry over those skills into his career. And of course, teammates always have stories. And one of the stories that I didn't recollect right away, but one of his teammates talked about a particular play in which, and this teammate actually went on and played Division I baseball after Bethany and kind of an acclaimed amateur baseball player here in Minnesota. So he played a high level. He said Doug hit a ground ball in a game one day that he has never seen a ball hit so hard. It took a bit of a bad hop. It hit the shortstop in the head and ricocheted to the right fielder. So imagine that. Of course, he added Doug was only able to get a single on the play. And then another teammate talked about Doug as a freshman, and he was nervous. He got off to a bit of a slow start. And he had like one hit in his first 6 or 7 games, and he told Brian that, I think coach is probably going to bench me if I don't get going. Well, Brian said he went on some sort of crazy tear. Well, I was able to find that tear. He was 16 for 20 in his next 20 at-bats, 23 for 32 in his next 32 at-bats. Hit over 700 over that streak that I'm not sure any player has ever duplicated that. And then another story, and some of us were talking about this before, and Doug is the first position baseball player that is being inducted into the Hall of Fame. And his teammates wanted to make sure that he was being inducted as a position player and not as a pitcher. So a freshman, kind of a nervous freshman, one of his first days in practice, and we're in the gym, and we're going to hit in the batting cage, and Doug is loosening up in the batting cage, and according to this kind of scared freshman, the ball was going in some interesting places, like off the top of the cage, off the sides of the cage, not really near where the batter might be standing. And so this freshman said the next words were words that he will never forget. Schwartz, you're up in the cage. And he said, I thought I was going to die. Because he was now going to go in. You have to understand Doug was 6'3", 190, and at that time was clock throwing in the 90s. So now we fast forward to the championship game, the state championship game in 1993. And everybody has memorable games. But this particular game, we had lost the first championship game, and so now we're back, and we were down 5-0. In fact, the pitcher against us had thrown a perfect game for 5 innings. And in the 6th inning, we score 7 runs to take a 7-5 lead. And we're pretty excited. Bottom of the 6th inning, actually, as we were scoring those runs, I had told my assistant coaches, if we need relief, we're going with Doug. And they just looked at me. They didn't say anything. They just looked at me. And so I told Doug to get loose. So we're playing at the stadium, and the bullpen is kind of down the right field line, not separated. And as one of his teammates reminded me in an email, that the balls from the bullpen were going into the dugout, onto the field of play, and they were going past the dugouts kind of regularly. So we get to the bottom of the 6th. The other team puts people on 1st and 3rd, runners on 1st and 3rd with 1 out, and the pitcher is done, and we have to make a change. And so I bring Doug in, and his teammate, the catcher who's here tonight, recalls the story that of the 8 warm-up pitches, he collected 7 of them from the backstop. He caught 1. And of course, the other team was but I knew pitching. That's why I brought Doug in. We've inducted 4 of our former pitchers into the Hall of Fame here. So having this astute knowledge of pitching is why I brought this guy in, right? And I'm watching this. He throws 2 pitches, a 1-hopper, the second baseman, double play. We're out of the inning. We score 2 more in the top of the 7th. Doug goes back out in the bottom of the 7th with a 4-run lead, walks the first guy. The next guy gets a hit, strikes the next guy out, hits the next guy. Now understand the reason why I put him in. His career pitching statistics at Bethany prior to that day, he had come in relief the game before and threw 2 pitches and got a win. That was his first win as a pitcher here at Bethany. His stats were amazing though. Going into that game, he had pitched 18 innings for us in 2 years. He'd struck out 18 guys and walked 37. I knew Doug was the right guy to put in. And why was Doug? Now they have the bases loaded. He's hit a guy, he's walked a guy. A lot of guys don't recover from that. He gets the next guy to hit into a ground ball out. They score a run. And he threw 3 pitches to the final hitter of that game that I don't think that poor young man saw. It was over. So why, think about all of our lives where maybe we've tried to do something where we haven't been very successful. And now you're in a clutch pressure situation. Doug Radel was the guy that I knew would come through. That's why he was there. And that's why we celebrated a state championship that night, because of the kind of person Doug Radel was. He was a dream to coach. For 2 years, I just wrote his name in the number 3 spot. Doug Radel, number 3, every single game. He was the only guy that had back-to-back 40-hit seasons for us at that time. So baseball is a statistical game, right? So in 2 years that Doug was here, He was all division 2 years. His freshman year, he's the most valuable player in the division. He was all state for 2 years. He was all region for 2 years. He was the first preseason All-American that we had. We won 2 divisional championships when Doug was here. In 243 at-bats here, he struck out 13 times. 13 times in 243 at-bats. A career batting average of .432. He made 1 error in 2 years, and he would probably say that was a questionable one. He was 15 for 15 in stolen bases, never thrown out. One game he had 7 RBIs. One game he was on base 6 times. When he left here, he had 4 single-season records, and he had 6 career records. 5, I'm sorry. He had a career record in hits, doubles, triples, batting average, and on-base average. Don said it the best. I was a lot smarter coach when I had players like Doug Radel. Doug Radel is the epitome of what we hope to build our baseball program around here. He could have fun. He had fun on the field. He had fun off the field. But he knew what it was to win. It's a great pleasure of mine to introduce Doug Radel and welcome him to our Hall of Fame.
Thank you, Coach. I appreciate the introduction. As you can see, I'm no longer 6'3", 190. I think I could still steal 15 out of 15 bases, though. So, but it's great to be back at Bethany. This is only my second time back since the mid-'90s, and the last time was about 5 years ago when my wife Tammy was training for a new position in the cities for a couple weeks. I came down and visited her for the weekend and wanted her to show her Bethany and check out all the changes. Well, I was impressed at what I saw. One of the first things I said to Tammy is, "Where did Coach's house go? It used to be right around the corner." The campus looks amazing, and those who've been part of its growth should be very proud. I want to thank the Bethany Athletic Hall of Fame Committee for this honor. I played with and witnessed many amazing athletes here at Bethany, and for you to select me is truly an honor. Next, I want to thank Coach Westfall. The first time I met Coach in person was in Appleton, Wisconsin, at the high school all-star game, which he just commented on, in July of 1991. I already committed to Bethany, and of course was impressed with him and excited to play for him. Well, little did I know that evening that Coach was going to be the guest speaker. And I still can remember how impressed I was with him and listening to him speak and saying, wow, I get to play for him next year. Well, I wasn't disappointed. He's been one of my greatest mentors, and I am so glad that we were able to win the state championship together in 1993 and have so many great times here at Bethany. You learn a lot from a coach, and so many of those things that coaches taught me, work ethic, professionalism, and discipline, are things that I believe have made me who I am, both in my professional and personal life. Next, I'd like to thank my parents who are here tonight. My dad, who was my coach from the time I was 5 through high school, is a big reason why I fell in love with the game of baseball. That, and I also grew up across the street from a baseball field, definitely didn't hurt. My parents would always be there for all my games, no matter what sport I was participating in, lending me their full support. So here's just a little story I wanted to share about them. It was our sophomore year, and we just returned from our spring baseball trip in Oklahoma and Arkansas, and we had our first regular season game scheduled against Northern Iowa on a Saturday in late March. And they were planning to make the trip from Fond du Lac, Wisconsin, which is about a 10-hour round trip. And I told them that no problem. It was supposed to be like 35 degrees the next day, and I said for some reason we're gonna play. They have a dome. I have no idea where I got that information because the football team has a dome in Northern Iowa, and so Saturday came and it was 35 degrees and raining, and the game was canceled, and they already left. And remember, this is 1992, and no one had cell phones. Bad mistake on my part. Let's just say they probably weren't too pleased with me, but they did get to enjoy a Saturday in Cedar Falls, Iowa in March. Now, that just shows you how supportive they are. They'll even go and watch me play when we don't even show up. So we still get a kick out of that story to this day, but they probably weren't too happy the day after. So anyways, I appreciate their support, not just in my athletics, but in every adventure of my life. Next, I want to talk about my teammates. Coach, I have to give you kudos again because you not only recruited some talented ball players, but you recruited some awesome characters as well. We were a tight group, and I think that showed with our play on the field and why we were able to have so much team success. We had a lot of fun. It was awesome how close we all became, and probably one of the most exciting days I had at Bethany was one of the toughest. We won the state championship, which Coach just talked about. It had to be around midnight or a little bit after. We went out for breakfast, had our awards banquet, and that was it. The last time we were all together. So, we all went our separate ways. Some of them I haven't even seen in 20 years. I want to thank Mike Fresky, Chris Rook, Brian Cadle, Jeff Oberding for coming tonight. You guys are great teammates, great friends. Some of those guys, I see, this is the first time I've seen them since 1993. Most of them, like I said, I haven't seen, but thanks to social media, we stay connected. Most of it's over our sports, like Packer-Viking rivalry, and giving each other a hard time. You see, the Packers, they weren't that good when I was here at Bethany in 1993. And that kind of stinks because I never won that battle when I was here. But I think we've done all right over the last 25 years. I want to finish up with a couple of additional thank yous. I want to thank my wife, Tammy, for her love and support. She still encourages me to get out and play ball, now that I feel like that ship has slightly sailed. My last mention is thank you to Bethany Lutheran College. Not only did Bethany give me a chance to play baseball at a collegiate level, but I got a chance to get a great education. At Bethany, you get great one-on-one attention from people who care. I know for a fact that Bethany is the reason where I am at today, and I will always appreciate that. Thank you again for this amazing honor.
We started the evening with the sport of basketball, and that's where we're going to end it tonight. I did not have the privilege of seeing the team back in the early 60s play, but I did have the privilege of seeing this next individual play. And I've seen a lot of basketball played at Bethany, going all the way back to when I was a student here in the mid-'80s, and even a little bit before that to some of Ron's teams in the 70s. When Art came along, he started to generate some interest and bring in some talent from the city of Milwaukee. And I remember guys like Thaddeus Hilliard coming here to play ball, and there started a long list of some very talented players. But this next individual was in a class by himself. When I grew up in the 70s, one of the popular TV shows was Happy Days. And when this guy played basketball at Bethany, Fonzie, those were happy days. Because you could play, and you're going to hear some statistics that I think Coach is going to talk about. You came to Bethany, and there's a couple of things I want to relate real quickly here before I bring up Coach Westfall. You were here in the transition from the 2 to the 4 years, and you played the last 2 years that we were as a junior college and ended in a national tournament appearance, and a pretty nice place there as well. You took a year off, and then you came back to this place. And you had the kind of basketball ability you could have played in a lot of different places, but you chose to come back to this institution and represent us on the basketball court at an exceptionally high level. And I first want to thank you and acknowledge that for what it is as well. Ironically, the NCAA, when we made the move from the 2 to the 4 year, for whatever reason, they simply don't acknowledge the stats that existed at a junior college level. So Alfonso was here for the last 2 years as a junior college and then put in 2 other years of statistics at a 4-year level. And if you were to take a look at our statistical career records, you're going to see a lot of guys up there that you played with and afterwards. And some of them played, for 4 years at a 4-year level. Even when you played here for just the 2 years, your junior and senior, you still currently are atop most of the statistical numbers that we've generated. Your points alone are roughly 1,000 more than the second place guy on that list. But what made you fantastic was, I remember the game with Gus Davis here. And that was a big game for us at that time, because we were early on in the junior college, and Gus Davis had some great teams. And I think Coach Jedlow, that was your team, and we had played them here at home, and the place was rocking that night. And it was a close game. We were down by a point. Coach called a timeout, and everybody in the stands knew who was going to get that last shot, except for Coach Jedlow. Because if I remember the play right, you got the ball, you took it down the lane, and what made you you made everybody on that court a better player, Alfonso, because you took the ball, you got the traffic, you drew the defense, and then you dropped a nice little pass off to DeJuan Grant, who put it in as the horn blew, and we knocked off Gustavus, and that was a fantastic night of basketball on this campus. You gave us so many great memories, and it is an honor to bring you into this Athletic Hall of Fame. And in order to induct you and to present you as well is Coach Art Westfall.
3 inductions, and they put me at the table farthest away from the microphone. Fonzie, you might as well just come up because Don just said everything I was going to say. Of course, didn't tell me what he was going to say. He just said it, and I don't know what to say. You know, there are special people, and as a coach, you are only as good, obviously, as your players. And I was a lot smarter coach when I had really good players. And players like Doug and certainly someone like Fonzie. Okay to call you Fonzie? So we talked about Doug 25 years ago, 15 years ago, 2002, the spring of 2002, I drove to Milwaukee because a friend of mine from Milwaukee Tech High School had recommended this kid from Brookfield Central. He said, I think he can play a little bit. So I called the coach, and the coach arranged a meeting, went into Brookfield Central, Fonzie's high school coach, and myself and Fonzie sat in the coach's office in the locker room for an hour and 15 minutes, and he never said one word. 0. Not one, nothing. And I drove away. I remember specifically driving away thinking, this kid has no interest, but he's really polite. He listened to me for an hour and 15 minutes. He's a pretty good kid, but he has no interest in Bethany. So I came back. I put his card on the bottom of the file and quite honestly kind of forgot about him. A little while later, we lost the kid that I thought we were going to get. And I started going back through my cards. I should give this Mayfield kid a call. So I called, and his mom answered the phone, who was one of the more special ladies that I've ever met. And I said, I don't know if your son mentioned to you that we had a talk about a month ago at the high school. And she said, oh, Coach, he came home. He was really excited. He was talking about it. He was really excited. And I thought, wow, why didn't he just wink at me or something? I would have called him right away. And I kept watching film of this guy, but he was literally overshadowed by a teammate of his named Joe Thomas. Some of you may have just read recently that Joe Thomas has played 10,000 straight snaps in the NFL as an offensive tackle. Went on to the University of Wisconsin and then has played in the NFL for ever how many years you can get 10,000 snaps in. Everybody noticed Joe Thomas. Not enough people noticed Alfonso Mayfield. So fast forward, we get him here to visit. He comes in. I think we have a great visit, but he really doesn't say much. He goes home. I'm calling him. I'm wanting to know. And then he said to me words I'll never forget. I'm coming, Coach. And I knew by the conviction in his voice he was coming, because that's the kind of person he was. So now he's on campus, and again, we talk about teammates, and one of his teammates told me that for 2 straight days, they knew Fonzie. They went to the gym and played. He never said a word. Not a word for 2 days. And they said, we didn't know if he was shy, homesick, or just rude. But they said they had shared some snacks with him. And then he went home and he came back and he brought some snacks. And he shared the snacks, and they knew from that moment on they would be lifetime friends. And it was interesting as I started to get this feedback from Fonzie's teammates, almost every one of them said, there's Fonzie the player, and there's Fonzie the person. And they talked about him as a player, and they talked about how he was almost always the best player on the court. But he never talked about it. He never bragged. He never was boastful. He was the quiet leader. He never took a drill off. One of his teammates said, unfortunately, I had to pair up with him every day, and he just whipped me, but he never took a drill off. He was the best player, the best leader, the best teammate I ever had. When the 2007 season, the first game was an exhibition game against Winona State. Winona State was the defending Division II national champion. And our teams went there because guess what they thought they would do to our team? That's why you schedule people in exhibition. They put an All-American to try and guard Fonzie. And this young man had been the Defensive Player of the Year, Division II of the year before. And all Alfonso did was score 30 and keep Bethany in the game until the very end. And you know what? Every one of his teammates said they have never heard him talk about that game. He didn't have to talk about it. And then there was the legendary regional championship game, which kind of parallels the story that Don just told. And again, his teammate relayed the story how we were down to closing seconds of the game in beautiful Bismarck, North Dakota. And Coach Jedlow calls a timeout, sets up the play. Fonzie takes the ball down the middle, probably could have scored to tie the game. He kicks the ball out to Cedric, and Cedric buries a three-pointer at the buzzer and sends our team to the national tournament in Danville, Illinois, first national tournament in 42 years. Fonzie made the play. Did he need the credit for the basket? No. No. That was Fonzie the player. Fonzie the person. You know, we hear this cliche quite a bit, I think, but I think in this case it's really appropriate. He's a better person than he was a player. How many 20-plus-year-olds describe a teammate as a humble servant? Not very many. He cared more about his teammates than he did himself. And somebody said, you know, he could be climbing the corporate ladder today because of his intelligence, because of his drive, but you know what? He's choosing to make a difference with troubled youth in the Twin City area, and he's going to make that place a better place. And I think as a coach, you have personal attachment to every player you've ever coached. You know, one of the things that always bugged me about Fonzie was he outdressed me, and he did it again tonight. I can't say I care for the shoes, Fonz, but the tie is great. You know, he was one of those guys where you'd look at him and you'd think he's not working very hard, but he was always first, and he was always the best. You know, and as a coach, you always wanted to say to your players, what do you do when no one's watching? You never had to worry about Fonz. And you know, you had a good team if your best player was your hardest worker. That was Alfonso Mayfield. The regret that I have is that I only was able to coach Fonzie for 1 year. And then Coach Jedlow took over our basketball program and had the pleasure of coaching him for the next 3 and had a terrific career. You know, Fonzie today is who he is, I think, in my opinion, because of 2 things. Number 1, his mom. As I said, she was a special lady. Fonzie had a twin brother that we also recruited, but he went somewhere else, and we got Fonzie. We played the team here at Bethany, Fonzie against his brother. Both players have 16 points. And his mom, and we won the game, though. That was the most important thing. We won the game. And so I can still picture sitting in the North Gym. Fonzie, I don't know if you remember this. With your mom. And she said, take care of my son. The other reason Fonzie is who he is the decisions that he's made. He could have gone in a lot of different directions. He's chosen to make good decisions. I only coached 2 players here who scored over 400 points and had 200 rebounds in a season. Thaddeus Hilliard is the other one. He's also inducted in the Hall of Fame. So as a freshman, Fonzie had 400-plus points and over 200 rebounds. There's a Free Press article that referred to him as Mr. Double-Double because he just had multiple games of double-doubles. His freshman year, he was in the top 10 scoring in our conference, in top 10, 8th in scoring, 5th in rebounding, 10th in assists, 1st in steals, and 10th in free throw shooting. And I think that, one of the things that Fonzie was, as Don alluded to, a key player in that transition from a 2-year to 4-year because he could have played other places. He had opportunities. He chose Bethany, and that's pretty special. Don alluded to his stats, 2,252 points, 725 rebounds, 403 assists, and 183 steals. Wow. But you know what? Those numbers don't define him. Those numbers don't define him. You couldn't get those numbers from him for all the money in the world. Because what defines him was the kind of person he was, the loyalty that he had to his teammates, to his coaches, and to Bethany. A true pleasure, Fonzie, to welcome you into the Hall of Fame. Congratulations.
I got to take this off. I hate standing behind the podium. But I need everybody up here. I need family, I need teammates, and I need coaches. Yeah, oh, this corner, everybody up here. I need everybody up here. Look, there's no way that I can accept this without these people here. Come on now. Everybody's waiting on everybody else. But absolutely, there's no way I can accept this without these people behind me. And I'm gonna try to take my father's-in-law's advice and keep this. What's the KISS principle? Keep it short and simple. I'm gonna try my best to do that. But I'm gonna say, and this might be the worst start to an induction speech ever. I never wanted to play basketball. I never wanted to play basketball. I didn't want to play in high school. I had no desire to play in college. I had no ambition to do anything beyond that. But I could play, and that was just what we did. We played ball, and I remember very, very clearly Coach Westfall the day that you showed up to my high school, and I'll tell you, I listened to every word. I didn't know what was happening. I didn't know what was going on. And I'm gonna tell you, I walked into the room, and Coach Westfall is sitting there, and he's clean. He's got his initials embroidered, I think, in a few places, and I said, man, who? I said, I didn't know what. I said, who is this? And I said, it's rather very, very good, or it's very, very bad. So I didn't know if he was a superintendent of school, I was in trouble, or I made it and we go into the league. I didn't know what was happening. So it took me the hour and a half just to realize what had happened, and I did go home. I was pretty excited, and I was just glad that somebody came to talk to me. So I'm always thankful for that. But there was a reason why I had to tell you that I didn't want to play basketball. And you heard about some of the stats, and I was able to do some great things here at Bethany. And I think about today. I keep my awards in my office, now my home office, and I keep it in there for one reason, and it's not to show it off. It's a reminder for myself that I was able to do these great things here at Bethany and get all these accolades, and I went into it with the wrong mindset. What could I have done if I would have went into it setting goals for myself for this game? And I didn't, but I was able to do some great things, and that was a regret of mine. What could I have done if I would have set some goals for myself. And I'm bringing these people up here. I'm looking at my two nephews especially. And I'm gonna say y'all too, and Naraya, I got a niece here too. Y'all make sure y'all set goals for yourself. And you go for them every single day. Whatever it is that you do, you be the best at it and you work hard at it every single day. Set a goal. And if you reach it, great. You set another goal and you keep on climbing. If you don't, great. You just learn from it, figure out where you messed up, and you just keep setting goals for yourself. That's my uncle moment. I'm gonna get off of that now. So of course I've gotta give my thank yous. I want to say thank you to the Bethany institution. I got so much love when I was here from everybody. Joni, I'm looking right at you. From administration to faculty and staff, my professors. I don't know if any of them are in the room right now, but I got a special thank you for them. You heard already just the intimate classrooms, the one-on-one attention that we all got, and I needed that to discover what kind of learner I am and what kind of person I am, and that helped me as I graduated and moved on to the workforce. So I thank everybody from the people working in the cafeteria to the what's the village, what's the other food place, the Viking Village, whatever. Yeah, everybody. I mean, it was just so much love when I was here. So thank you to all of Bethany. Really, I gotta say thank you to my teammates. There's a few of them here today, and these are my brothers. I mean, we probably the most strangest group together. If you see us, it's just the weirdest guys. You got the farm boys, you got the city boys, and we were together. You see, they here today, they support me, and they did it my first day when Coach Westfall, I tell you, I didn't say nothing my first 2 days because I was miserable and I was scared and I didn't know what I was doing. I showed up on campus. Here, and I had a TV, a VHS player, and 3 VHS movies. I think y'all still got my movies, and that's all I had. And these two guys here, Carlton and Cedric, they were roomed right next door to me, and he talked about the snacks. I needed those snacks because I didn't have nothing to eat, so I had to go next door, and they was willing to share with me, and they literally had to pull me out. If it wasn't basketball, I wasn't going out the room. I didn't want to leave. It was a hard transition for me, but these guys, I can go into stories. Kobe, John, I can go into stories, but I don't think we want to do that today. So, but I love them. I love them to this day. These are my brothers, really, my teammates. Coaches, Coach Westfall, you believed in me. You came to my school, you recruited me, and I had an opportunity to go other places, and I didn't know if I was making the right decision to come here. And I'll tell you. My mom was a big reason why I came, and when you left from our conversation, I went home and I talked to her for a long time, and I said, Mom, I can't do it, I can't go. So I was excited, but I can't go, and she told me, she gave me the most motivating, inspirational speech that brought me here. And I said, Mom, I can't do it. And she said, boy, you better get out this house. And I tried to threaten her. I said, well, boy, if I go, that means I ain't going to be here no more. And then I thought it was going to work. But she said, boy, you need to go. It's all right to be scared. Just do it. And I got to make another correction. You said it was my twin brother. My twin brother is right here. He's the problem here. He wasn't the basketball player. That was my other brother that we played against, and we scored the same amount of points. But he was supposed to come with me. I thought he was coming, and he changed his mind at the last minute, which I'm still mad at him for. But he passed away. May he rest in peace. Love him to death. So, coaches. Westfall, you were the one. I always knew I could play, but you were the one that actually, got me to believe that I can be somebody great on this campus here. You believed in me, and I believed in you. So I always thank you for that. Jed Lowe, where are you at? I know you in the back. Coach Jed Lowe, I could go on and on about just the impact that Coach Jed Lowe had on me, and everything that he taught me, the things that he was able to do for me on the court, I probably applied to many things off the court. And I don't know if this was something intentional that he was doing, but the things that he was teaching me, it wasn't just about what we were doing in the gym. I tell you, I'll never be late for anything, ever. I had to leave my family today. I drove here by myself because I can't be late, and I'm sitting here waiting for them. But it was one of those things that he put into me, just, the importance of time and those things. But I can't say thank you enough to Jed Lowe. We took on a different role, kind of as we progressed throughout my years, and I can definitely say he was one of those father figures for me, and he invested in me. It was more than what I could do on the court. I knew genuinely he wanted me to be well, to be okay, and I felt that even to this day. And I can't thank you enough for that, Coach. And I was gonna have him say some words, but we'd probably be here till about 11:30 if I let him do that. So, Coach, I thank you for that. The assistant coaches too that poured so much into me, Coach Jones. We always had some good laughs, and he's I always consider him. I mean, he just got a great basketball mind. I probably never told you that, but I'll say it now. But we had some good times, and definitely when I say assistant coaches, I had to make sure you came up here too, because Kirsten, this is Jed Lowe's wife. She invested in me as well. It was just so much love that I got from the whole household that I will never ever forget. And we definitely need to thank you, because practice has definitely changed after y'all got married. So I gotta, we all indebted to you for that. My family. My family is so awesome. They so dope. I don't know if I can find the words to describe my family. And we've been through so much. And we're so close, not location wise, but we just always been there. They always supported me. I haven't always given them a chance, and they weren't able to come to a lot of my games, or they didn't come to a lot of my games, and mostly because I never told them. I never told them, how well I was doing or anything. I think it took Kirsten and Coach Jed Lowe to actually send some newspapers home, so the family actually know how well I was doing out here. But I just know that they've always supported me, and I definitely wouldn't be here and had the experiences that I have if it wasn't for them. I of course I gotta bring out my wife, because I gotta keep the home happy. So my wife, we weren't together when I was here on campus, which was probably a good thing. I don't know if we would have made it, but she's definitely my biggest fan and supporter, and I love her to death. And she's pregnant, everybody. I ain't gonna do it to you. Okay. So Coach Westfall kind of alluded to the idea of what I'm doing today, and I'm starting a nonprofit specifically for young Black kids to offer supportive services and especially mentorship to these kids to put them in a better position. And I am taking donations, so we might get the thing going around. But I started this nonprofit for the reason of what I'm now calling my Bethany experience. And my Bethany experience involved, it was so eye-opening. It was so eye opening. And when I came to Mankato, it was really my first time out of Milwaukee, and I began to see things that I've never ever seen before. And it was small things, it was large things, but I began to see things like that I've never seen before. And the most impactful things I began to see is I was watching Coach Westfall, I was watching Coach Jedlow, and I was watching another man who's not here today, Bukata Hayes. And I was watching these men, and I was watching how they would interact with their wives. I was watching how they would go get dressed and go to work every day, real clean. And I was watching how they were interacting, within their own networks at, on Bethany campus. And I was watching this, and it was a little bit different than what I grew up watching. The men I grew up watching. It was a lot different, actually. And I began to think about a lot of things. And as I'm watching these men, I'm realizing that I'm imitating a lot of the things that they were doing. And I wanted to become that. I wanted to become somebody that my nephews and my nieces can look up to, my kids can look up to, and also kids in the neighborhood can look up to. And I want to be able to create that, and that's what Safe Homes is all about. And the reason why that is because of my Bethany experience. So I'll say, and I got a chance to talk to President Pfeiffer here. I almost, I went to school with your son. I almost gave you his nickname for a second, but I got a chance to talk to the president, and I was glad to hear that you connected with a couple actually an organization I used to work at in order to bring minority kids here to Bethany, and I hope that turns out well, and anything that I can do, I'm willing to help with that, and it's so important. And I encourage the whole campus to continue to reach out to those kids because it's needed, and it may not happen otherwise, right? But the advice that I would give is we have to make sure that we're offering support for those kids that are coming on campus here, because I'm telling you, it's different for us when we get here. All right, it's different, and we need the support. So we got to get them here. That's the goal, but we got to get them to finish. We got to get them to complete and graduate with that diploma. In order to do that, we need that support. We need that support system. I wouldn't have been able to make it without these two men, just been able to watch them, but without Bukata Hayes made it real to me, right? Because he was somebody that looked like me. He was from the same city. He was working on campus here, had a family, doing well, was successful in basketball. He made this real for me. And I don't know if I would have been able to make it without that, right? So we got to encourage that. So that's my advice to the school, is to continue doing that. And I wish you the best in that. And again, if I can help in any way, I'm willing. So I'm gonna wrap that up. I know it's getting late, but again, thank you. This is just an honor that I still don't even know if I know what to think about it. I mean, it's great, and I'm humbled by it. So thank you. I'm gonna sit down now. There you go.
Obviously, a very special night, and I don't think it's any shocking to you, Raleigh Reinholtz, the fact you talk so much, so passionately about the importance of athletics on the college here and what that can do for the young men and women here in terms of their roles on the athletic court and competition, but also off the court in terms of leadership and teamwork and how that affects so many things in life. And it was also just, I think, very impactful, I know, to me and many people here as well, that you kind of heard that constant theme as Coach Butterfield would talk and with Doug and Alfonso about the importance of the one thing needful in that relationship with the risen Savior and how that carries through in so many things in life as well. So it's been an outstanding evening. We thank all of you for being here.